Monday morning, 9 a.m. Studio 4 of the New York Ballet opened its doors right on schedule, just like every other day. The sound of shoes brushing the wooden floor, calm, breathing the soft hum of background music. All of it was familiar. But today, something was different. Someone new had just walked in. And suddenly, everything seemed to shift. She wasn't wearing a luxury warm-up jacket. She didn't have brand new pointe shoes, no makeup, no styled hair. Just a woman maybe in her late 20s, wearing a faded worn-out practice outfit, holding a cloth bag, eyes fixed on the floor. She walked to the far end of the room, without saying a word, sat down, and began to retie her shoes. No one knew who she was. No one introduced her. No one had invited her in. And because of that, every pair of eyes slowly turned toward her. Who's that girl? No idea. Looks like she got off at the wrong stop and ended up here. Maybe she's just trying it out. Gotta say, that outfit takes guts. She looks like someone auditioning for a scholarship. The quiet laughter rolled across the room. No one said it loudly, but it was clear she wasn't welcome. Emma heard every word, but she didn't lift her head. She didn't react. She gently pulled down her sleeve, tied her hair neatly, then stood up and walked toward the bar. In the mirror, she saw the other girl's shoulders, squared chins up, confident, watching her from across the room. They were beautiful, tall, and had probably trained here for years. And she, just a name no one knew. And that was something she had chosen. The night before, she had told her husband Nathan, "I want to walk in there as someone no one knows. No reputation, no connections, no last name, no special treatment, no help from you, no referrals. I want to know if I were just an ordinary person. Would they even see me?" Nathan looked at her. "Are you sure?" Emma nodded. "If they're fair, I'll stay quiet and be thankful. If they're not, just record everything." Emma took the last spot at the bar. She drew a deep breath, placed her hand on the wooden bar, and began the first movement. Slow, precise, perfectly in rhythm. The other dancers turned away. Some smirked. One whispered, "She probably thinks this is some kind of free trial class." What they didn't know, the studio was equipped with internal cameras developed by Nathan's company, the official reason footage for the Artistic Supervision Board. But today, that system had another purpose: to capture how a system treats a woman it believes has no value. Emma knew that, and she wanted to see how long does it take for the truth to get buried just because someone looks plain. She didn't need anyone to speak for her. She didn't need an introduction. She just needed to try. Barre class started at 9:15. The list was posted on the wall, 14 names. Emma's name wasn't on it. Still, she stepped forward, took the last position, and quietly followed every basic warm-up move. No one stopped her. No one said anything. Perhaps they assumed she'd eventually back off on her own. But Emma didn't back off. By the second plie, Madison Greer, the daughter of the artistic director and the company's principal ballerina, suddenly spoke up. "Sorry, this area is only for those who are officially allowed to be here. If your name's not listed, feel free to watch from the side." The whole room paused for a moment. No one defended her. No one objected. Everyone knew if Madison spoke, it might as well be law. Emma paused, not because of fear, but because the movement had ended. She turned toward Madison, gave a slight nod, and said nothing. Then, she resumed the next exercise, as if nothing had been said. Madison curled her lips. "Oh, silence is a choice too. But don't forget, not everyone here has the value it takes to stand in formation." A few people chuckled. A blonde girl made a face and looked at Emma. "Probably didn't know this round's audition fee was $2,500. Huh, but hey, anyone can dream. Emma still didn't look at them. She raised her arm high, her wrist, rotating with perfect softness and impeccable motion. At the front of the room, Madison turned to the assistant coach and muttered just loud enough for others to hear, "Who let her into this class? This isn't for beginners." The assistant glanced at her tablet and replied quietly, "I checked the files." She transferred the audition fee. No recommendation letter, no technical profile. But the system couldn't reject her. Madison smirked and crossed her arms, then let her stay and realize on her own that she doesn't belong. Saves us the trouble of asking her to leave. Emma heard it, every word, but she didn't turn back, because she knew she had followed the proper process, and now she only had to do the one thing she could do better than anyone in that room dance. Inside the technical observation room, 16 camera feeds were playing on the screen. A man was watching his face, expressionless. But when Emma held her balance on a fixed point for 6 seconds, he gave a small nod. Nathan Kingsley. The internal recording system was operating at full capacity today at his request. Under the title for board archiving, every image from the rehearsal was being streamed to a private server where Nathan and a team of artistic advisors were assessing a real social experiment. No name, no money, no backing. Can someone like that ever be accepted in this world? That was what Emma wanted to find out. And Nathan, instead of interfering, chose to become the only observer silently on her side. 10 minutes later, Madison switched to pirouette combinations. She deliberately moved to stand near Emma. When the music began, Madison turned to her partner and said just loud enough, "Step back a little. If she falls, she'll say, 'I pushed her.'" Giggles continued to spread. Emma turned and executed a perfect pirouette. No slip, no stumble, no missed beat. She said nothing, but every spin was a statement. At the end of the class, Madison stepped out. First, paused at the doorway, then turned to Emma. "Do you know why I let you finish the class? Because I wanted to see how someone with nothing would end up embarrassing herself." Emma looked at her, quietly, then bowed, as if to an audience after a performance, and then she turned away, said nothing, because she knew everything was being recorded. There was no need to speak. The truth would speak for itself. The rehearsal ended at 11:30. Emma left the studio early, just as quietly as she had arrived. No one called her back. No one asked her anything. But just 45 minutes after she left, an 18-second video began spreading online. The footage was blurry and shaky, taken from the far left corner of the studio. Emma was in the middle of a pirouette, but the clip only captured the moment she slightly lost her axis, then cut immediately to Madison spinning, gracefully rising like a swan. The caption read, "When you think you're an artist, but you're really just passing through." Fake dancer, Chacha's audition fail, Chacha's cringe queen. Within an hour, the clip had reached 50,000 views. On TikTok, countless users stitched the video and mocked Emma, my best friend, after 3 Zumba sessions. She paid $2,500 for that audition. She thinks she's dancing, but we think she's convulsing. In a private arts group, the comments were just as harsh. Who allowed this girl into the audition? Heard she doesn't even have a profile. And she still got to step on that floor. Emma was at a subway station when she got a message from an old friend. "You're on TikTok. Kinda viral." She opened it, didn't blink, didn't report, just turned off her phone and placed it back in her bag. Elsewhere in the city, inside a private technical control room, Nathan was reviewing the original footage from 16 different camera angles. The moment when Madison smirked after Emma's turn. The moment when Madison had pushed a chair toward her before class. and the moment right after the cut, where Emma had completed a flawless pirouette. They cut exactly 2 seconds, Nathan said to the technician. I want the full restored version, with timestamp verification from the system. The technician nodded. We've embedded identification watermarks from the beginning. They don't realize your system uses AI to authenticate every frame. Emma got home. Nathan was waiting. Without a word, he handed her the laptop already queued up with the original multi-angle footage. Emma watched in silence. When it ended, she exhaled softly and said, "They've started." Nathan looked at her. "Do you want me to speak out?" She shook her head. "Not yet. Let them say everything they want. The more they talk, the more it will hurt when the truth comes out." Emma didn't need to justify herself. No public statements, no clapbacks, no interviews. All she needed was the original recording and the right moment. And what Madison didn't know was that the video she used to mock Emma had been captured by a system owned by Emma's husband. Wednesday morning, a short email was sent to all dancers. The special evaluation will begin at 10:00. Priority will be given to candidates with outstanding portfolios and financial potential to support the project. This is a strategic assessment. Participation is optional if criteria are not met. Just that one message was enough to split the studio into two: the financial assets and the shadows. Madison read it and laughed out loud on the spot. Someone should head back to the gym. Around here, we choose people who can bring in money, not just hit the beat. The group burst into laughter. Emma was sitting in the far corner, holding her ballet shoes quietly. No one spoke to her. No one asked, "Did you get the email 9:47?" Emma stepped up to the registration table. The woman in charge, a platinum-haired woman with thick glasses, looked her up and down, then asked coldly, "Name Emma Laurent." "You're not on the list. Did you pay the audition fee?" "Yes. I have the confirmation." Emma handed her a printed receipt. The coordinator barely glanced at it, then pulled out a small slip and tossed it onto the table. "Here, number 42, side room. No access to the main stage." Behind Emma, a group of dancers snickered. She thinks just paying the fee means she gets to dance Swan Lake. Let her try. She'll figure out her place soon enough. Emma didn't turn around. She took the number and walked away as if nothing had happened. 10:10. The main stage lit up. Madison performed her solo of Black Swan with a custom music arrangement. Every step was perfectly timed with the lighting crew, camera operators, and sound team, just like a real performance. The artistic director stood at the side of the stage, smiling proudly. That's Madison Greer. Not only a brilliant dancer, but the one who brought 5 investors into this project. The entire auditorium applauded. Emma sat in the last row in the dark. No spotlight, no microphone, no name was called. When it was her turn, Emma stepped onto the side stage. The wooden floor had a long crack running through the center. The music she had submitted in advance had been replaced with a 48-second shortened version played at the wrong tempo. She asked the sound assistant, "This isn't the track I submitted." The assistant shrugged. "You don't get to change it." The decision came from the production support team. Emma closed her eyes, inhaled, and when the music began offbeat, misaligned, she still started dancing. Not because she expected anything, only to finish what she came to do. After her performance, one of the judges whispered into the mic, thinking no one could hear, "Off-tempo from start to finish," and she submitted an application. Someone beside him replied, "No sponsors. Don't write notes. Waste of time." In the private control room, Nathan clenched his fist. Every word they said was captured by the AI system and time-stamped. He said nothing. Not yet. But for the first time in years, he whispered into the headset. That's enough. From now on, don't delete anything else. Emma stepped off the side stage, sweat on her forehead. She bowed. No applause. She lowered her head a little further, as if bowing to something she had already foreseen, but chose to walk into anyway. And just then, Madison walked past, looked Emma in the eye, and tossed a VIP ticket at her feet. Here, if you're not going to perform, at least you can watch me dance. Emma bent down and picked up the ticket, looked at it for a few seconds, then folded it and slipped it into her pocket without a single word. That afternoon, the studio resumed technical training. Emma showed up on time in proper attire. No one asked her to come. No one invited her to join the main group. But she came anyway. Madison noticed her the moment she walked in. She didn't say anything at first, just glanced at Emma, then leaned toward a fellow dancer and whispered, "Some people still don't know when to back out." They both chuckled softly. One of them raised her phone and began filming secretly. The session started with a sequence of diagonal turns. Groups of 3 took turns performing. Emma, not listed in the core group, stood quietly at the end, waiting for her turn. When it was finally Emma's turn to step out, Madison suddenly cut in. "Oops, I forgot I was up next," she said, loudly feigning confusion. She stepped directly into Emma's path, then accidentally took a backward step just as Emma was mid-spin. Just one step, but it was enough to throw Emma off balance. She fell. The wooden floor was hard. The fall wasn't serious enough to cause injury, but it was enough to make the entire room freeze for a few seconds. Someone let out a quiet snicker. Another voice murmured, "And she's auditioning with that everyone thinks they're the lead these days." Emma said nothing. She pushed herself up from the floor, didn't look at Madison, didn't explain, didn't seek sympathy. What she didn't know, or perhaps she did, was that the sole insert in her shoes had been swapped. When she stepped out 5 minutes earlier to get water, someone had replaced the insole with an old, worn, slick rubber pad. No one saw it. There was no proof. Only the ceiling camera in the corner had captured the whole thing. After Emma left the floor, Madison remained in the center of the room. She didn't look at anyone. She lifted her phone and recorded a selfie story. In the video, she smirked, looked toward the corner where Emma had just fallen, and said, "If you can't handle the training, don't bother trying. Maybe the stage needs more janitors than dancers." Then she ended the clip. No tags, no error. Just casually posted it online. She didn't realize that right behind her, the studio's security camera was still recording in higher resolution with clearer audio and stored on a time-stamped system. In the control room, Nathan was watching live. When he saw Emma fall, his eyes narrowed. When he saw Madison record the video, he didn't say a word. He simply typed a command archive immediately, 1738, fall and mocking clip. Emma returned to her seat. A young dancer, not close to anyone, quietly approached and handed her a bottle of water. Are you okay?" Emma nodded, took the bottle, didn't speak. Then she looked up, and for the first time that afternoon, stared straight at the large mirror across the room. At the center of that mirror was the camera. Emma's gaze paused there for just 1 second, not to ask for help, but as if to tell whoever was watching, "I'm still standing, and I've seen enough." Friday morning. Emma arrived at the studio as usual, still holding her old water bottle, her faded canvas bag and ballet shoes neatly tied. But this time, the door was locked. On the door was a red printed notice, "Access suspended." By order of the Supervisory Council, reason allegation of plagiarized choreography music from an unverified source During the audition process. Investigation ongoing. Do not enter related premises until further notice. Artistic Coordination Committee. Emma stood silently for a few seconds. No explanation, no warning, no calls. She tried contacting the coordinator. The only response was a message. The matter has been handed to legal. We are unable to assist further. An hour later, the company's internal group already knew everything. The first post came from an anonymous account, shocking unknown candidate accused of using a copied score from a performance at last year's Paris competition, suspected of submitting music that doesn't belong to her during the audition. No portfolio, no reference, yet she passed to the next round. There's clearly something wrong with the system. The comments below were all too familiar to Emma. It's always the ones who pretend to be quiet. Figures she's the one who fell flat in the middle of the studio. Real talent doesn't need to sneak in the side door. Emma returned home in silence, opened her laptop, searched for the music she was accused of plagiarizing. It took only 10 seconds. It was the piece she had composed while studying in France 5 years ago, posted on an old forum under her real name, Emma Laurent, posted on April 11th, 2020. The metadata was still there. The original file was still there. She played it, listened to the opening bars, and for the first time in weeks, her hand trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because she now knew exactly who had done this. They didn't just want her out of the system. They wanted to ruin her name, so if she ever spoke up, no one would believe her. A clean takedown, no shouting, no contact. Just one accusation, backed by an entire system behind it. Nathan walked in. He looked at the screen, saw the music, saw the metadata, saw the look in his wife's eyes. "Do you want me to handle it now?" Emma looked at him, nodded just barely. "Not yet. Let them believe they've won." She stood up, quietly tied her hair back, and said a sentence that Nathan would never forget for years to come. "They stole my work to erase me from the place I belong. Then I'll take back my stage by making them expose themselves." Dress rehearsal. The air was thick with tension. The ballerinas warmed up on stage. The side hall was filled with donors, sponsors, and media. Emma entered, alone. No one looked at her like a dancer, just a leftover, a shadow misplaced in a world of spotlight. Madison stood at center stage, holding a branded electrolyte drink with a sponsor's logo. Next to her was Stacy, the daughter of a diamond-tier investor, Vanessa, who had once been on the cover of Vogue, and Catherine, the assistant director. They stopped rehearsing and turned to look at Emma as if she was some new form of entertainment. "She hasn't been kicked out yet," Madison said, with a half laugh. "I thought this was a run-through for actual leads," Vanessa scoffed, "not a place for anonymous donors dreaming of the spotlight." "Oh no," Stacy clapped mockingly. "Let her perform. She'll make a perfect cautionary tale for first-year students. This is what happens when you buy a ticket and think you're an artist." Madison stepped forward. Her cold, disdainful gaze could cut glass. In her hand was a stack of premium tickets, each worth over $5,000. She pushed them toward Emma's face and smirked. "You know what? Seat A1 center row is already taken. Not by you. Not by anyone like you." She threw the tickets to the floor and raised her voice clearly in the crowded room. "No one here rents dignity by the hour. You can afford a seat, but you'll never afford the soul it takes to stand on this stage. You're just a trophy wife with a rich husband here to fake a moment for Instagram before going back home to post your little story." The room fell silent. No one laughed. No one spoke. Even the background music stopped, like the studio itself was embarrassed. Emma clenched her hands. small hands still calloused from months of quiet, unseen training. Her nails dug into her palm, her chest rose and fell. Her lips quivered slightly, but her eyes, not a single tear fell. Not because she didn't feel pain, but because she knew this was the moment they let their guard down. Outside the glass hall, the sound of an engine echoed. A sleek Maybach S680 slid silently into the parking space. Emma didn't look. She merely tilted her head and walked toward the USB control for the music, light as if no one had just tried to humiliate her. And in that moment, she started counting in her head. 3 more minutes. No one invited her. No one called her name. There was no list acknowledging the presence of Emma Collins at the final rehearsal. But she walked in anyway. The room dimmed. All the ballerinas stepped back to the rest area. The main stage lights came on. Emma walked straight to the music console. She handed a silver USB to the technician. He glanced at it, hesitated, then recognized the marking, a proprietary format once used by composer David Yuki, who had arranged music for several Kingsley Foundation projects. Without a word, the technician nodded and inserted the USB into the central sound system. Backstage, Madison sensed something was wrong. She hurried over. "What are you doing?" she snapped, reaching for the USB. Emma turned toward her. Not angry, not flinching. "I didn't come to watch. I came to dance. Just 3 minutes. After that, anyone can do whatever they want with me." Madison froze. The confidence in Emma's voice wasn't defiant. It was certain, as if the performance had already been decided in advance by a force she couldn't comprehend. The music began. It wasn't the Academy's arrangement. It was something else, low, powerful, pulsing with restrained force. Emma stepped into the center of the stage. No tutu, no spotlight, no partner, just a woman ordinary standing there, her body ready to launch like a silent arrow. No one in the auditorium understood what was happening. Madison started to step forward, but Vanessa held her back. "Wait," she whispered. "I don't know who she is, but I have a feeling we're about to see something we never should have underestimated." Emma began to dance. No flashy technique, no theatrical flourishes, only pure movement, as if her body were made of music, as if the world had forgotten what dance was meant to be, a way to tell a story. And the auditorium fell completely silent. A woman who had just been ticketed in the face, had her dignity crushed, had been pushed off the stage, still chose to dance. And that choice alone made the entire system take a step back. Emma was still dancing. Her body moved in sync with a composition no one recognized, yet everyone felt a strange familiarity, as if every note had been written just for her. The room remained silent until footsteps echoed. Slow, deliberate. The main doors to the auditorium opened. A man entered, no introduction, no invitation. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, a charcoal gray tie, the light catching the Maybach logo on the car key still in his hand. His gaze was cold, sharp, and focused solely on Emma. Madison, who had been inching closer to the stage, froze. "Who is that?" Stacy whispered. Vanessa squinted. "I think I saw him in Business Weekly. Kingsley something?" Madison turned around, confused. "No, no way. Why would he be here?" She looked at Emma, then back at the man. Suddenly, her face turned pale. Nathan said nothing. He simply pulled out his phone and handed the stage technician a short clip. "What was in the video? Madison is throwing tickets in Emma's face." Her voice said no one rents dignity by the hour. Emma's eyes stood still in a room full of ridicule. The technician froze. He'd seen this man on the cover of Forbes, on the Academy's sponsorship contract, on the board of directors' plaque. His hands trembled as he nodded. Nathan spoke softly, just loud enough for those nearby play it. Only when she stops. Down in the pit, Madison began to sense something was wrong. Emma, does she know him? She asked Vanessa, voice rasping. Vanessa didn't answer. No one did. And at that moment, Emma stopped. The music had ended. A single clap, steady, from the man at the back of the room. One clap, then two. Gradually, the entire audience rose to their feet, not because they understood what had just happened, but because what had just happened on that stage could not be ignored. Emma stood there in the circle of silence, the spotlight from above, shining down, not bowing, not smiling, just nodding slightly as if she had known all along. And Madison stood, frozen, overwhelmed with confusion. No one confirmed anything. No one explained anything. But a creeping fear began to crawl up her spine, because that man didn't need to speak. His silence was enough to make the whole system tremble. The center seat still held warmth. Nathan had just sat down, his face, calm as always. But behind those eyes was a memory that had never faded. The penthouse on the 82nd floor of Kingsley Tower made no sound except the soft rain tapping against the glass. New York City buzzed below, but inside that room, everything was still. Emma sat at the piano, her hands resting gently on the keys, not to play, but to find stillness. Nathan entered, placing a cup of hot tea beside her. That ballet company has approached me 3 times about investment. Are you still choosing to stay silent? She nodded lightly. I don't want to be one of those who got in because of money. Nathan looked at her, saying nothing for a moment. They won't welcome a stranger easily, especially someone who knows no one, has no name, and wears second-hand clothes. Even better, Emma replied. I want them to judge me by each step, each spin, each movement, not by a designer dress or the Kingsley name. He sat across from her. But you know, if they go too far, I won't stay quiet. Emma was silent. Then she looked up and met his eyes. There's something you can do for me. What is it? Record everything. Not to publish, not to threaten, just to keep. If the time comes to prove something, I want the truth to speak, not me. Nathan leaned back slightly, frowning. You want to endure everything yourself? Emma gave a faint smile. It's not enduring. It's an experience. It's proving. It's to remind myself that I don't need anyone to walk onto that stage. Not even you. Silence lingered. Then Nathan nodded. I'll have the surveillance system installed. High quality. Only you and I will have access. Emma touched his hand gently. And don't let anyone know there's a connection between us. No investment. No sponsorship. No public link to the theater. Not until I'm ready. Understood. And Nathan? She paused, her voice soft but unwavering. If I fail, let me fail completely. Don't save me midway. He looked at her for a long time. I didn't marry you because you needed saving, he said quietly. I married you because you were strong enough to get back up on your own. I'll only be behind you if you fall. In the months that followed, Emma quietly appeared at rehearsals, always early, always staying late, never socializing. She relearned basic techniques, even though she had once performed in Paris and Vienna under a different name. No one recognized her. No one cared. The second-hand leotard, worn-out shoes, low ponytail, everything was carefully chosen to make her invisible. And that invisibility made mocking her easier. But Emma never reacted. Each time someone took a jab at her, Nathan received the full footage via his private system. And every night after Emma slept, he watched not out of anger, but to understand why she kept going, because she loved dance, because she wanted to earn her place on stage with her own feet. because of the truth. One evening, while sitting by the window, Nathan quietly typed a message to his technical team: ensure the footage is stored separately across 3 secure servers. No access granted to anyone but me and her. If a breach occurs, trigger protocol 403, release all footage to the National Artistic Oversight Board. He didn't want to break her vow, but if someone crossed the line, he would be the last person they'd want to face. The night before dress rehearsal, Emma stood alone in the private studio. No stage lights, no applause, just a quiet track and herself. Every step was sharper. Every move was more precise. She was no longer the girl who had been dismissed in that training room. She was an artist, preparing for a moment that would define her. And Nathan, watching from afar, said nothing. He simply placed a hand over his chest, where his heart was beating fast, because he knew by tomorrow morning no one in that theater would dare ask her again, "Who are you to be here?" The music ended. The main stage fell silent. The lighting suddenly shifted from the soft pink of a ballet performance to a stark, cold white, as if transitioning from art to judgment. Emma still stood there center stage, unmoving, unshaken. In the front row, Nathan sat still, his gaze never leaving his wife. Beside him was an iPad already connected to the master control system admin access secured weeks ago. No one knew except one man. A salt-and-pepper-haired assistant seated next to Nathan gave a silent nod. He was Nathan's special aide, the one who had quietly worked with the theater's tech department on Emma's behalf for the past 3 weeks. And then, just as the lights shifted again, the screen behind the stage lit up. A female voice came through the speakers. Recorded footage from Studio B, last month, the 14th. Video begins. Madison stood beside the music control console. In the frame, she was smirking at Emma. "Change the track," Madison whispered. "The one she practices with is boring." I sent a new file. The technician, actually someone Nathan had placed, looked hesitant. "This hasn't been approved." "Just play it," Madison snapped. "I'm the lead." Moments later, the music changed. Emma was mid-pirouette when the sudden shift in tempo made her stumble. She fell to her knees. The room erupted in laughter. Another clip appeared, Madison speaking to a dancer during break. "I kept Emma's premium ticket from yesterday, $5,000 a seat, and she thinks she's getting on stage without a name. Please, I mean, she actually dances beautifully," the other girl replied. "Yeah, then save it for TikTok. We need names here, not talent." Whispers stirred in the audience. Some people exchanged glances. Next clip, Madison with Helena, the ballet technique instructor, in a meeting room. She says she composed the track herself. "Any proof?" Helena asked. Madison smirked and pulled out a music sheet. "It's similar. Same theme. I submitted it first. Who's going to sue? Don't let the board find out. But, fine, I'll say she accidentally reused it and give a light warning." Video ends. The lights shut off. Not a sound. 1 second, 2. Then murmurs rose from the crowd like a ripple turning into a tide. A few people stood up. Some VIP guests quietly left their front row seats and exited the hall. Among them, Mr. Linford, a major sponsor who had previously backed Helena, nodded slightly toward Emma before walking out. Madison stepped forward, her face pale. She shouted, her voice cracking. "That video was edited. She doesn't have access to—" Emma lifted her head. For the first time in this entire journey, she spoke. "You gave me access by leaving me in the shadows long enough to see everything clearly." The room fell silent again. Someone else stood, Victor, the theater director. His face was ashen sweat, beading on his forehead. "I had no idea this was happening. I'm sorry." Nathan stood up. The entire auditorium held its breath. "You don't owe me an apology," he said. "You owe it to every artist who walked away because of the corruption you allowed." Victor stammered. "This was all just a misunderstanding. This is a system built on privilege, favoritism, and protection, and it needs to fall." Nathan picked up his phone and pressed a button. A message played through the loudspeaker, an internal announcement to the full board of directors, a call for an emergency meeting to restructure leadership, immediate suspension of Helena's authority, and a halt to all performances involving Madison. Emma stood still, like a pillar in the storm. She didn't scream, didn't scold, didn't gloat. She simply stood there, and no one could look away. They once thought she was just a misplaced girl in the world of the elite. But in that moment, they understood she wasn't lost. She was leading the way. 72 hours after that fateful dress rehearsal, the entire operational structure of the New York Ballet Theatre was shaken to its core. An internal memo spread like wildfire, bearing the official signature of Nathan Kingsley, chairman of the National Arts Investment Council and silent patron of over 11 arts companies across the U.S. Over the next 3 days, all executive directors, curators, and internal advisors of the Metropolitan Ballet must submit individual reports addressing allegations of favoritism, music plagiarism, funding fraud, and professional discrimination. Anyone who fails to comply on time will be immediately suspended. Helena, who once walked the theatre halls with pride, now sat curled in her office, her anxious reflection cast against the glass walls, eyes darting often to the ceiling camera. Madison had it worse. She was suspended from all performances, stripped of her access to private studios, and her name was removed from all printed materials for next month's show. When she entered the theatre that morning, no fellow dancer nodded in recognition. Instead, there were averted eyes, silence, distance. Even Alyssa, the one who had once been closest to her, stood 2 steps away, ballet shoes in hand, saying nothing. "You're turning your back on me too?" Madison asked, her voice trembling. Alyssa didn't answer. She simply said, "I didn't know you were that kind of person." In the boardroom, the advisory panel gathered urgently. Victor, the theatre director, tried to maintain composure, but was surrounded by eyes full of suspicion. One board member asked bluntly, "You knew exactly who Nathan Kingsley was, and you still covered for Helena." Victor hesitated. "I didn't think he really cared about our internal affairs. He was just an investor, not part of artistic leadership." Another slammed the table. "That girl is his wife, and he installed cameras from the first week." A female member representing the dance division spoke coldly. "I voted to renew Helena's contract 3 times. But if what's in the video is true, I'll personally request she never teaches here again." Victor wiped his forehead. His fingers tapped nervously on a cold cup of coffee. Meanwhile, Emma said nothing further. She didn't appear in the press. She declined all interview requests. She posted nothing on social media. She simply returned to the studio. On the second day after the live stream, she walked into Studio 2, previously Madison's domain. No one said a word, but as she began to warm up, 2 male dancers instinctively stepped beside her, forming a line. One of them, Ryan, who once laughed when she fell, spoke hesitantly, "If you need a partner for your new piece, I'm in." Emma nodded. "Thank you." She didn't hold grudges. She just kept going. On the 3rd night, Helena was summoned to a private hearing. No one knew what was said inside, but by morning, the placard outside her office was gone. Her name disappeared from the teaching roster entirely. Madison never returned. Rumor had it she left the city, but no one could confirm. Whispers spread among the artist community about the dancer who once graced a magazine cover but vanished overnight. Then 1 week later, Emma found a plain sheet quietly placed in front of her locker. It was an invitation. Fall performance, principal artist Emma Kingsley. Below the title were 3 signatures from the New York State Arts Council, the theater's new director, and Nathan as official patron. No flowers, no cake. Emma folded the invitation and placed it inside her locker, not because she was indifferent to recognition, but because she knew true victory was never about the spotlight. It was about the moment. A broken system was finally forced to see itself clearly. More than a month had passed since the theater exploded over that video, and the Metropolitan Ballet had yet to fully calm down. The conference room doors had been replaced with frosted glass. The nameplate Professor Helena was gone, replaced by interim artistic director Brianna Yu, a new name, but one quietly tied to the company for 18 years, always behind the curtain. And Madison, that name vanished from the system faster than any lead role ever reassigned. No apology, no explanation, just silence. And in the arts, silence is sometimes the loudest statement of all. Before the fall performance, where Emma was named principal artist, the company held a final full run-through. No more sneers, no more whispers behind her back, but also not yet warm. Emma entered the backstage area, carrying her worn pointe shoes, the same pair from her earliest days of training. Several had offered to sponsor new ones. She declined, not out of thrift, but because the old shoes reminded her of how far she'd come. A young technician approached her shyly. "Miss Emma, I heard you studied at a small school in Nebraska." Emma smiled. "Yeah, there were only 3 of us in class. The floorboards were worn down, but when the music played, it felt like the world disappeared." He grinned. "I practiced ballet in my garage as a kid. Never thought I'd ever end up here." "Well, you are here now," Emma replied, locking eyes with him. Inside the dressing room, those who once kept their distance now sat quietly side by side. A girl named Lara, once suppressed by Madison, approached Emma with a printed music sheet. "I added a transition section for the second act. I know you usually choose your own, but if you like it, I'd be honored." Emma took it, skimmed it, then nodded. "It's good. Let's use it tonight." Lara blinked. "Really, you're an artist," Emma said. "If your music makes me want to move, then it deserves to be heard." Showtime was near. The audience was beginning to take their seats. Row A was marked "Guest of Mr. Kingsley." A few media figures appeared but were directed to a separate area. No press conference, no podium for statements. Emma stood just off stage. Stage lights shone through the thin curtain, a silent reminder that the moment was drawing close. Nathan walked into the wings. No tuxedo, just a white shirt, with sleeves rolled up, a calm expression on his face. "I'm only here to watch you walk out," he said. "I'll be sitting in the very back." Emma looked at him. A pause. "I thought, if no one applauds tonight, if no one looks at me with respect, it'll be okay," she said softly, "as long as I know I got here on my own feet." Nathan nodded. "And what if they applaud, not for your dancing, but because they're afraid of me?" Emma smiled faintly. "Then tonight, I'll make them applaud. For me." In a far corner of the backstage area, Ryan and Lara were prepping props. He whispered, "Do you think Emma's ready?" Ryan shook his head. "I don't know, but I think this won't just be a performance. This is how she tells the world she was here, and no one can erase that." The curtain trembled slightly. The cue music began to play. A voice crackled through the headset. 30 seconds to intro. Emma drew a deep breath. One breath, one step, and a stage waiting. The stage was bathed in a cool light, not blinding, not inviting, just a steady glow, placing the dancer at the center of hundreds of breathless stares. Emma stepped out. No background music, no partner, just her wearing a plain white dress with no embroidery, no flowing tulle like the others. Hair was tied neatly. No heavy makeup. A woman who on the street one might pass without a second glance. But when she raised her arm and slid her foot across the wooden floor, the room tightened. The first sequence was the solo she had rehearsed endlessly in Studio 1B. Movements that looked simple, executed with absolute precision. Not a single unnecessary motion. Not a single glance seeking approval. No seduction in her dance, only willpower and a cold, sharp clarity that made the entire hall too afraid to even breathe loudly. A young dancer whispered to the person next to her, "She's not dancing for applause." And it was true. Emma didn't bow after the opening. She turned and glided to stage, right where Ryan waited. Scene 2 began. Ryan emerged like a shadow. He didn't lead, he followed. The silent duet told a story, without words, a woman who was knocked down, dragged, pushed into darkness, but never crumbled. The final move of the duet, Emma sat with her back to the audience, back straight, head high. One arm was raised firmly into the air. A message that needed no explanation. I didn't fall. I chose to stand. In the guest seats, Nathan's eyes never left his wife for a second. Beside him, an artistic director from San Francisco whispered to her manager, "That woman, I don't know how she moves like the stage belongs to her when she's not even in designer with no brand behind her." The manager answered quietly, "Maybe because she's not here to impress. She's here because this is where she was always meant to be." The transition segment began. Lara, the one who had composed the new section, sat backstage, eyes glossy as her arrangement played for the first time. She looked at Emma just as the dancer raised her arm for a difficult leap. Only dancers know that move is so exacting a single mistake in tension could mean a knee injury right on stage. Emma closed her eyes and counted her breath, and jumped. The hall held its breath. 2 seconds later, she landed perfectly. Not a sound. In the audience, a few claps began, scattered, hesitant. But Emma didn't bow, didn't acknowledge, she just continued. And as the finale played a flurry of turns, ending in a sudden halt, she stood still, spine straight, eyes lifted toward the ceiling. No one moved, no one knew how many seconds had passed. Then one clap, then another, and then the entire hall, everyone stood up. No shouting, no cheering, just one unified sound applause. Loud, steady, unrelenting. Emma still stood there. She didn't bow because she didn't need to. After that night's performance, Emma didn't leave with Nathan. She stayed backstage until the last light went out. In the dressing room, Lara was folding her costume. Ryan was still wiping sweat, despite having rested for 20 minutes. "You're heading out already?" Lara asked, as she saw Emma placing her shoes into a cloth bag. Emma nodded. "I'm not used to staying for celebrations. You all enjoy yourselves." Lara looked at her as if wanting to say something, then stopped. A brief, quiet emotion flickered in her eyes. Not because Emma had changed the company's history, but because she made the unseen feel that they too could step into the light if they waited long enough. Outside, the Metropolitan Theater was still lit, but instead of the usual warm yellow glow tonight, it was bathed in crisp white light, like a fresh canvas, yet untouched. Reporters stood behind barricades. They weren't allowed in. A few tried calling out Mr. Kingsley, but he had left through a side exit, leaving no image behind. Emma exited quietly through the side door. In her hand was just a cloth shoe bag and a plain bottle of water. A young girl ran up behind her and handed her a postcard. "Miss Emma, this is from my aunt in Paris. She's a choreographer. She said if you agree, you could perform in France." Emma took it quickly, reading the handwritten French lines in violet ink. "Thank you," she smiled. "But right now, I just want to go home." The door of a Maybach opened. The back seat was spacious and lit. Nathan sat there, jacket over one shoulder, eyes on his phone. He looked up. "Get in, and we'll talk." Emma stepped in and gently shut the door. And in that moment, when no one else was around, she leaned her head lightly on his shoulder. "I did it," she whispered. "Not because they accepted me, but because I no longer needed them to." Nathan squeezed her hand. "I know, but now you'll need to be ready." "For what?" "For when every door opens and none of them lead to peace." Emma didn't respond. She closed her eyes, rested against him, and said quietly, "As long as you're there." The next day, Emma Collins's name appeared on two of America's top arts publications. The headlines didn't mention Nathan Kingsley, didn't talk about wealth, didn't bring up any scandal. They simply read, "The quiet woman who made the Metropolitan rise." Beneath the title was a grainy photo, Emma, standing at center stage, light pouring down from above, back straight, arms at her sides. Not tensed, not forced, just standing. At the ballet company's management office, Brianna Yu opened her laptop. Over 27 emails had come in within 12 hours from Paris, Berlin, Seoul, Tokyo, Sydney, all with the same request: "Can we reserve tickets to see her perform?" Brianna looked at the screen, then opened the performance schedule file. She didn't ask Emma. Instead, she sent a message: "If you don't want to tour globally, I'll find a way to decline the requests. But I think it's time you stepped out of New York." That evening, Emma sat alone at a small table in her old apartment. She had turned down every party, every interview. On the table sat her first pair of ballet shoes, the ones her mother had bought with money earned from dishwashing long ago. She didn't cry, didn't smile. She just looked at them for a long time, then gently placed them into a box. Outside the window, the city lights still blinked softly. No one knew, but tonight, a woman had just completed the performance of a lifetime. There are women who don't need to shout to be noticed, who doesn't need the $1 million dress to be acknowledged, and who doesn't need to walk through the front door to know they truly belong. Emma wasn't a hero. She didn't retaliate, didn't take anyone down, didn't argue. She simply stood still at the right moment, in the right place, and spoke just enough to make an entire system stop and look at itself. That night, social media erupted. An 11-minute clip filmed from a side stage angle went viral. No caption, no soundtrack, no effects, just light movement and silence. The account that first uploaded it wrote only one sentence: "I don't know who she is, but I know I just watched something important." On an art podcast a week later, an elderly critic said, "I've watched over 2,000 ballet performances. Some dancers have better technique than Emma, but I've never seen anyone dance like they no longer need to be accepted." She didn't demand the stage. She made the stage fall silent. And Madison, the next morning, she arrived at work as usual. But instead of invitations from Florence, Madrid, or Tokyo, the only email waiting was due to feedback from multiple international partners: "Your performance collaboration file will be suspended for 18 months. No one needed to speak out, because the world had already answered. Helena, the one who had once stood, arms folded, while Emma was publicly humiliated, also resigned. No press conference, no defense, just a handwritten note. When someone lacks the courage to speak the truth, she should not be in control of the spotlight. Ryan, the one who quietly supported Emma throughout the rehearsal, didn't give interviews, didn't offer any remarks. He simply sent Emma a message. When you danced, you didn't look at anyone, but everyone looked at you. For the first time, I saw a stage fall, silent. Not out of fear, but out of respect. And Emma, she didn't open any social media accounts, didn't respond to the press, didn't accept interviews. Out of all the global invitations, she replied to only one, a small dance school in Brooklyn, the very place that once rejected her for lacking sponsorship. Emma returned there, not to perform, not to teach, but to open a fund for children who love ballet but can't afford pointe shoes. The fund's name, No Need to Bow. What's the lesson here? Sometimes we don't need to raise our voice to make the world listen. That in a world where loudness often drowns out truth, there are still those who choose silence, not because they are powerless, but because they know that when timed right, silence can be the loudest sound. Emma didn't come to win. She wasn't trying to defeat anyone. She didn't need applause. She just wanted to stop enduring. And in the moment she stepped forward, the world was forced to stop. If you've ever been looked down on for your background, your appearance, or simply because you didn't fit what others expected, if you've ever walked into a room where every glance told you you don't belong here, then this story is for you. No one has the right to determine your worth except you. And sometimes, if you just don't walk away, the world will turn around and finally look you in the eye. If this story touched something in you, please share, comment, or subscribe to Toch Story, because somewhere out there, someone like Emma is still standing silently in a crowd, and they need to know they are not alone.